In 1933, Dorothy Day started Catholic Worker in New York City. Today here in Las Vegas, Julia Ochoa Grosso has been working for over 30 years, having founded the Las Vegas chapter. Working among the homeless, we have her here with Susan next, talking about the homeless community and how they're reaching out. Let's give a listen.
You've been here, Julia has been here in Las Vegas serving for almost 33 years.
Right.
And you've been serving as Director of Catholic Workers
Mm-hmm.
in Las Vegas.
Yes.
That has to be a little bit on overload. You have to be a little bit wondering what's happening because you started in what year?
1986 in Las Vegas.
Okay. And you've seen it grow,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately.
Well, it's grown in population in those years, and it's also grown in the number of people that we serve. So
Mhm.
we have a lot of people that are mentally ill. Those numbers have grown, and the services have not grown to coincide with that growth.
So now that we have gone, if I'm not mistaken, and please help me, because you've been doing this a long time, Julia, we are, one of the largest for the Southern Nevada in any of the states across America with homeless issues?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's true. On a given night, there's over 6,500 unsheltered people who are on the streets.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think we are doing about that or can do about it?
Well, there's a group that's working in Nevada called Nevadans for the Common Good that mobilizes faith communities, all different faith communities and nonprofits to work together in a nonpartisan way. And one of the issues that they're addressing is the housing issue. And so there are things that can be done, but at this point, we're just trying to analyze the problem. So there's a lot of parts to the problem of housing. One is the lack of subsidized housing.
Right.
And the other is that, there's a lot of people on the street who have mental health problems. So there's a mental health component that has to be addressed.
And that seems to be the issue, because if you take the sheltered homes and the non-sheltered homes, I understand that the mental issue, which seems to be why people, when they pass people that are on the street, people will say, well, they're mentally ill or they're not really ill. And therefore, our people now here in Vegas have been giving bottles of water as opposed to money, for example. I don't know how wise that is. What do you say about that?
But people on the street need housing, and people who are mentally ill need to have services. They need access to treatment. They need access to care. They need interventions.
Well, yes. When I pass somebody that's homeless on the street,
yes,
we have a choice of ignoring them, or we have a choice of, hey, I'm going to give you a bottle of water. Some people give $1, but you can't keep passing these people. We'll get to the seriousness of it without giving something.
Right.
And people are scared to give something, but you have to give something. Now, what you're talking about is we need housing. Encampment, would you say?
We need housing. We need housing first, which is they put people into housing and then they provide services, and they stabilize people by just getting them off the street.
Right.
And then they provide services.
Now, if they're off the street, then that does not make them a target for criminals that would come in where they're sleeping somewhere. Is that correct?
That's true. It's safer to be inside than it is to be vulnerable out on the street.
So are we doing ballot measures about how we can go about that? I mean, is there a voting system that we're going into now?
Well, there are people who are looking at possible ways to create revenue that could support programs, because there's a lot of ideas, but there are a lot of problems in terms of finding the funding for it.
Like yourself, Julie, I see people that are being, as recently as within a week, I see setups around the areas, daughters, mothers with kids, and there's a lot of setups, The problem with the setup is, even though you want to give the mother a couple of dollars, is that she's standing there by the granddaughter or daughter. It's a bad image to have that little girl see that you can beg for food.
That is an issue, but it's not the most substantial issue that we're talking about. What we're talking about is people are in crisis. They're on the street. They need housing. And so, yes, there's a lot of things that child's going to see and be exposed to on the street. And probably the mom begging for money is one of those things, but there's a whole list of issues that make that child unsafe.
Since that's one of thousands, your answer to when I ask you is, we need housing. We need housing.
That's right.
We need housing. And I'm told that if we put an encampment of housing in, they'll be safer. I'm also told that they're going to do a test. I'm not for sure. I'll check it here. I'm not for sure how many. I want to say 250 people would be tested to make sure that they're not mentally ill and that they don't have alcohol on them to go into those certain housing. Is that right?
I never heard that, but I couldn't say that's right because I haven't heard of that procedure.
Yeah, it comes from Deacon Tom Roberts, who's working with the Catholic Charities.
Yes, that's Catholic Charities. That's a little different than what we're doing.
I see. So tell me then how you are doing it.
I'm with the Catholic Worker Movement.
Right.
It started in the 30s in New York with Dorothy Day, who's in consideration for sainthood. And so I'm part of that movement. And we have a lay community of volunteers that live here in Las Vegas. And we run a soup kitchen and hospitality houses and do ministries to the homeless. But we are a community of volunteers. So we live an alternative lifestyle. Based on the early Christian model of taking in the strangers. When the first Christians believed that Christ was going to arrive any moment, any day now. And so they had in their homes what they called strangers' rooms. And so the Catholic Worker bases their hospitality houses on this model of the early Christians. So we live together, we have hospitality houses, and we do ministry. One of our main ministries here in Las Vegas is a soup line. So we're serving 4 mornings a week. We're serving a few hundred people on the street, and we've been doing that from the beginning. We also take people into our homes who are formerly homeless with some discernment, and they live in and they work with us. So we have a room for about 6 or 7 people from the street. And so that's our way of working. But we're a whole lifestyle. We have we base our life together on the social teachings of the church. Our ministries are around the corporal works of mercy, and we also are advocates for justice, and so we speak to issues of peace and nonviolence and justice in the tradition of the Gospels. So that's
wow.
So.
Yeah.
Our ministries are 4 mornings a week. We do a soup line, and we're serving about 150 to 200, mostly men, but men and women and some children, and we feed them. And then once a week we did a hospitality day where we have about 20, mostly guys that come to our house. They do laundry, they take showers, they have a little respite, and then we have a sit-down meal together. That I just came from that. We also once a month assemble food boxes and distribute them to families in need. And then we put out a newsletter. We do a peace vigil once a week. So we have a whole life and work, and a lot of it's based on kind of the Benedictine model. Dorothy Day was the founder of the Catholic Worker Movement, and she was a Benedictine oblate, and so was very influenced by that. So there is a whole balance of work and prayer, work together, work alone, pray together, pray alone. And so we have a whole lifestyle that we try to model in the spirit of the early Christians.
Wow. Now, whoa, that's a lot. That's a lot. And grateful to hear it. And I would like to know how many, if you're doing 6 or 7 people, feeding 6 or 7 people, you said?
No, feeding 150 to 200 people 4 mornings a week.
So there's 6 or 7 of you doing it. Is that what you said?
We can take in about 6 guests from the street
okay.
who were formerly homeless, but at this point there's about 12 of us all living together, counting the guests. And some of the guests work with us too. They're kind of permanent, long-time guests. They become part of our family. A lot of these folks have no one in their lives and have been alienated from any kind of family base. So the Catholic worker becomes a family, and it's in addition to that, we have people who actually come and make a commitment to doing the work we do, and that's a different kind of relationship because they're joining the Catholic worker community. So it's a lay community of volunteers doing ministries and trying to live the social teachings. So, for example, we're serving the poor, but we also have a neighborhood garden, and so we're really basing a lot of what Pope Francis is talking about the environment. So the way we live, we try to live simply, and we compost all of the food scraps from the soup kitchen. So we have a beautiful garden that's made from that. So it's a whole integrated way of living that is kind of based on similar to a lot of the values of St. Francis as well.
Yes. And so, how much land do we have for compost?
I have 4 compost bins.
Oh, yeah?
And so I have we have a property that has 2 houses on a big compound. And so I have 4 compost bins. And I'm actually starting some vermicomposting too, which is worms.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Now, how will you use those?
Well, then I take what's made from all those food scraps, instead of that going in a landfill and causing harm to the environment, that becomes soil that we grow food that we can use in our food serving ministries.
And you're using worms.
Worms. They can make beautiful compost.
Wow.
Well, we call it black gold.
You call them what? Black
gold. But the point is that we're trying to live the social teachings of the church, which has to do with the dignity of everyone. We see Christ in everyone that comes to us, and we have steward our resources in a certain way. So we're trying to put those gospel values into action.
More dignity to follow.
A dear friend of mine, his name is Father Marty Padovani, has written a powerful book. It's a book which will enable you to deal with one of the pivotal realities of your life, your emotions. I can testify to you that after reading this book, I was able to get some clear insights into how to deal with things like anger, things like sometimes the confusion, sometimes the frustration and even depression that can be part of our lives. I want you to have this book, Healing Wounded Emotions. You see a telephone number right at the bottom of the screen, and you can get in touch with us by email also. But I want you right now to order this book. I'm going to ask you, if you would, to send us $13 or more to cover the cost of this book and to help us here in our television ministry as we're trying to get the good news out. I'm asking you to do this because this is pivotal to our lives. Finding a source of open doors, finding a source of peace in the raging things that go on. How do we deal with depression? How do we deal with self-criticism? How do we deal with change? How do we find God's will in our life? And oh yes, how do we deal with the emotion of anger? Think about it quickly. Pick up your phone, see that number, call, and find out how you can start to deal with a new progress in your life and in your hope and in your joy. And knowing that reading this book, you're going to find a clear road to peace and joy.
So what we're really talking about is that when we see the homeless people here now, fortunately, this woman of God is doing exactly what she has been called to do, which is to feed, take care of, cook, get them showered, the homeless I'm speaking. And you've been doing that for about 33 years, okay? Because you had, at the beginning, the need to want to help. But the people I was talking about here in Las Vegas are those people that drive by, and some of them have not had that conversion of the heart. Want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think that that is one of the really big obstacles in transforming our way of thinking is people's fear, a fear of the unknown, and it's people's lack of compassion for those who are in need. And so I think that the fear keeps people from cultivating compassion. And I think that's where the church communities, the parishes, could be a place that can cultivate more compassion, more insight, more understanding, and the churches, and then that could spread to people who are maybe not in the churches to understand that people on the street, anyone on the margins, they need our care. And of course, the Catholic worker, part of their charism has been to find Christ in the stranger, but to care about the one would be considered the undeserving poor, to even care about those folks who we would categorize as the undeserving, because as Pope Francis said, everyone is in need of mercy. This should be the year of mercy. And because even there's a huge correlation between mental health and trauma. So children who are traumatized as they grow up and become adults, they have many issues. And so you see these people end up on the street often. And so what we're doing in a way is we're taking people who've been traumatized in horrendous ways, they become adults, and then we don't have compassion for them. So yes, I think the opening up of our hearts, the cultivation of compassion is one of the things we need in order to make changes and make changes in policies.
The question would be then, how do we teach those people that are scared of the homeless, don't want to smell the homeless, don't really want to help the homeless? In fact, what they want is to have those homeless as far away from them as possible.
Well, I tell you what, the church has a wonderful tradition called centering prayer. And centering prayer is a practice that is a kind of a meditation practice, but it's a beautiful practice. And I would love to see more parishes teaching centering prayer, because actually it's found that meditation and that centering prayer is a way to heal our fears and to cultivate compassion. And this is also, of course, meditation in the monastic tradition is part of our Christian tradition. And so that was a way that we were able to cultivate compassion. Lectio Divina, meditating on the Word, is a way to cultivate compassion. And so you want to know how to do that. That's where I would say we need to start. Is giving more heedance to those practices that are part of our wisdom, our Catholic wisdom tradition.
Now, you had opened with the show today with, what was it, 6,500?
Around that number,
That are
6,500 on a given night, yes.
On a given night. And you house or take care of how many?
We give hospitality to about 6 people who were formerly homeless. And so the Catholic worker It was never designed to become this huge institution or bureaucracy, but only to model or to practice a way of life that could inspire others to do something similar. So yes, that's what we do, but that is a drop in the bucket in terms of what needs to happen.
Okay, so now we know we have the problem. We're looking for the solution of the problem, correct? The homeless is off the Richter scale. Southern Nevada is uno numero. So if we could have, pardon the word politics, please pardon that word, but if we could have the political realm want to give us buildings that aren't going to be used or encampment where we could put them in one place so they're not going to get hurt at night, because that's where the criminal interest comes in. The criminal, that, you know, if you're on a street, you're not so safe, but if you're together.
Yeah, I think there's that element issue, but also just exposure to the weather. I mean, this heat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the cold, the extreme weather of the desert is, trying to find water during the day, just all these, or using a bathroom. These are all very dehumanizing experiences. So
See, initially, in answer to that, in Santa Monica, we had such an awesome amount of homeless because they had the ocean, they had the bathrooms, then they had the bridges for getting under the bridges. They also had their own cell phones, a lot of them. So when we were working with them, but then they were hurting the businesses. People didn't want to go where they were. Even if we could go in and have dinner and bring the food out and give it to them, the business owners felt that was disparaging to their work, and it was. They had to close. Here, I understand we have tunnels underneath the Las Vegas Boulevard, and that they've opened. Tell us about that.
Well, I think people have found ways to encamp in the tunnels, and it's dangerous if there's any flash floods for people, for sure. But there's been things written about that where they're finding their survivors. A lot of people who end up on the street, like I mentioned before, come from trauma and they become like survivors, and so they find whatever way they can to survive, and that's what they're doing.
Well, apparently they've got even a mayor that lives there underneath the Las Vegas Strip, and he sells those little love balls. It looks like a little golf ball, has love. He goes out and he sells them. This is what I understand. And then it comes back, and whatever money he has, he takes care of the people that won't leave that tunnel. They don't want to lose their space, their bedding, and he takes care of them. And that's, I don't know how many are down there. Do you? Because I don't.
No, I don't know how many are down there.
But the Metro Department has said that it's one of the most organized, and then there's a couple of very tough places down there. But I never thought about people needing, as you just said, the weather, the heat, the bathroom. They have that set up there. So I'm saying if they can do that there, how many other places in Vegas can we do it?
Yeah, but the tunnels are, that is a very dehumanizing experience.
Yes, it is.
And those are people in desperation living down there. They're not like, oh, this is great, we have this tunnel. I mean, people have died in there because of like the flash floods. But there are people who will be on the margins no matter what is offered to them. But at the same time, we're not at that point. We haven't met the needs of a lot of people who would not reject a kind of service. So.
What do you think is the hardest struggle right now, today, as you go out that tour, that you're going to have to deal with, Julia?
Well, I think that the numbers are going to continue to grow. Even last week, we were serving, for the first time, we had to make a seventh pot. Our pots are 10-gallon pots. So we were needing more food, which was an indication that the numbers are going to continue to grow, because typically in the summer we see less people because people who come during the colder months from colder climates to Las Vegas, where it's warmer, leave in the summer and go back to those colder climates, and we're not seeing the numbers decrease. In fact, we're seeing more people. So I think just dealing with the growth and the demand for the more needs, I think trying to mobilize some kind of campaign to support housing and support particularly services for the mentally ill on the streets. I think that those are challenges.
Now, you may get just a little bit embarrassed about this question, but that's okay. How in the world did you start in all of this 33 years ago? Please.
Well, okay. Well, I actually started at the Los Angeles Catholic Worker because I had an older sister. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and I came out from high school with my twin sister to visit my older sister just for a summer visit. And that's how I was exposed to the Catholic Worker and introduced to the Catholic Worker. I was raised, I went to Catholic elementary school, and I understood, I was exposed to the Gospels. But when I found the community in Los Angeles, my young mind was thinking, oh, this is what it's about. And then I left college and joined the LA community in 1982. And I lived in Los Angeles for 4 years. I came out in 1986 and started the Catholic Worker here in Las Vegas. Became familiar with the Catholic Worker and what it's about, and was drawn to it, and I value the kind of holistic, comprehensive way of life it offers, and the vision of the gospel that living the values of the gospel. So that's how I got started.
Mm-hmm. Would you change anything?
No. I've had opportunity to be away from the worker, take sabbaticals, to look at it, and I've been exposed to different types of work, and I would have to say that I am quite content with this way of life. It's a real gift.
Mm-hmm. May I have that hand to tell you that the Lord's proud of you? So are we, but especially the Lord. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.